As a way of respecting, honoring, and creating awareness about our past, we begin our joint board meetings by acknowledging that New Paltz is on the ancestral land of the Munsee, Esopus, and Lenape people.
Okay, great. I'm just going to go through what we anticipate adding to this agenda. So in the joint business agenda, we're going to add Millbrook Preserve learning areas at approximately 8:15. Then under the village consent agenda, we have item number 7, authorize a one-time 6-month renewal for 93 North Chestnut building permit without an additional fee. Item 8, adopt village reservoir capacity study. This way we get reimbursement from Hudson River Valley Greenway, who helped us pay Chazen for that study. Number 9, authorize Fire Chief Worthman to officially declare the 2011 Chevy Tahoe as surplus equipment to be sold with a minimum bid of $4,000. And number 10, accept resignations, Rebecca Rotzler from Affordable Housing Board and Zach Bielecki from the Historic Preservation Commission. We actually pivoted and was able to put Zach on the planning board. And then another item, appoint Historic Preservation Commission alternate Stephen Cook to a full member seat and to fill out a term that expires on June 2022. Village business agenda item 1 to be added, Village Board Kingstonian pilot position statement. Item 2, approval to hire Chazen and Jim Wild to pump test wells on property south of Cherry Hill Tanks while it is still dry within the next few weeks, contingent on coming to an agreement with the property's owner. And then item 3 to be added, the resolution that Trustee Bill Murray wrote recognizing Carol Roper, Sally Rhodes, and Mary. How do we pronounce Mary's last name? Strohensky. Sorry, I don't know that. And that was all I had to be added to the agenda. Is that everything, Ari?
Yes, I believe so, unless the town has anything else.
Well, I have something from, it's not from the town. This is Neil. It's not something from the town. It's from the Shade Tree Commission. We were hoping to plant a tree in Peace Park where there's a tree died. And we were hoping to use the budget, money that we have in our budget this year, to plant a tree for Sally Rhodes. But we were told we need village board approval. And I know this is kind of last minute, but I thought it would get added to the agenda and no one did. But since I'm sitting here, I thought I'd bring it up.
Is the village board okay with adding that to the consent agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Sounds great. Thanks, Neil. Thanks, Shade Tree Commission. Great idea. And we can mention it when we do the resolution later.
Thanks. Sorry for adding it so late.
Neil, do you have quorum? I see David.
Not yet, but I'm pretty sure Julie's going to come because she wants to talk about the Millbrook Preserve.
Whose phone number is
Sorry,
7712?
That's me.
No, that's
Oh,
me.
That's Julie?
It's
Okay.
Julie.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
we're here. Great.
Dan told me he's not coming. He can't come. And Michelle's excused on our end.
Got it. Okay. Okay, so then why don't we, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the agendas as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Same for the town, same motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And just to get it out of the way, I'd like to motion to approve the village consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. So we have a couple of announcements listed here. Henry W. Bicycle Pedestrian Project.
This is Neil. I'll give a quick update. We just had a meeting with the committee this evening. We are working on the preliminary design is almost done. We're waiting to hear back about, we have to do a survey for bog turtles this week. And so we're still kind of waiting to hear back about that before we can release everything. But we're hoping that, sometime in the next month, we're going to have the preliminary design done and have a public meeting, and we'll be able to present it and then get everyone's feedback. The goal is to minimize the impact on the neighboring properties and trees, but also maximize the amount of safety for people that want to walk and ride and drive on Henry W. So it's moving along. It's a tight project, but the Alta Planning is doing a phenomenal job. They really are.
So that's sometime in October. We should have that preliminary design, Neil.
Yes.
Beginning or end of October?
Part of it depends on, the bog turtle survey, I think next week, and then there's like another week to get the plans, the results back. But when we're talking about today, we're talking mid-October. But although we're trying to see if we can move it up sooner than that. Because we do know people are interested and they want to hear, but we also we don't want to present anything and then have it change because we didn't have all the survey or the bog turtle results back yet. So, we want to make sure we have all the information before we present it and we don't make any mistakes.
So
Sounds great.
I'm continuing to get tons of questions about this. And if you drive down Henry W., you could get the impression that all those trees could potentially be chopped down. And I know there's no reality where all of those trees are going to get chopped down. I know Neil, Shade Tree Neil, and the rest of you tree huggers have no intention of sort of scorched earth strategy, which is what is being portrayed on Henry W. right now. And there's so much anxiety and I think, confusion about what your intentions are. And what can we do to quell those fears?
We can ask people to wait until we actually have a design to talk about instead of, overreacting. I know it's stressful to not know what's going on, but it's hard to talk about what the impacts are going to be when we don't know what the design is, right? And
but
so
it's not your intention. And do you see a reality where all of those trees that are marked, save? It just doesn't.
It's impossible. Some of those trees are so far out of the roadway that there's no way that we're even close to them. But we don't want to say which trees are going to be cut down or not cut down because we don't know for sure. The goal is to cut down as few trees as possible, because it's expensive to cut down trees and we like trees, right? They do a lot of good. But I can tell you right now, there is no way every single one of those trees that has a sign on it is going to be cut down. We couldn't do a project. Also because a lot of those trees are so far away from the right of way that they're not even on town land. They're in the middle of people's yards.
Neil, isn't it also like my understanding, so sure, some of the trees might be out of the right of way, but also I think what people were doing is they wanted to take a close look at the possibility of the town exercising its right to use the full 50-foot wide right of way. And my understanding all along is that, you're trying to design a plan that would improve vehicle safety as well as pedestrian and bike safety by including a shared path. And, you didn't need to use all 50 feet to accomplish that. So you're designing something that will, use part of the town's right of way, but that does not mean that you have to use the entire 50 feet. Is that correct?
Correct. We're trying to use as little as possible. The more you use, the more you have to build and pave and, inconvenience people with, moving trees or hedges or even taking them down. The goal is to not use 50 feet. The goal is to use as little as possible. And in some of those places, and like you said, the shared use path uses a lot less than sidewalks and bike lanes, which is why we've been putting so much effort into exploring the possibility of a shared use path, because it's cheaper and it uses less space and it's safer. So
I appreciate that the folks who live on Henry W. are, carefully watching and looking at this project, and, they want to understand, what it could end up being, what it could end up looking like. And it's perfectly reasonable to say, well, this is what it could be if you exercise the full 50 feet. So I think what, would be helpful at this point is to say, and I know it's hard because you're waiting for the preliminary design, but
we're trying to we recognize that not knowing is really stressful for people. So we had a conversation today, the committee, is there any way that, before we have everything official and, ready to submit to DOT, because, they may demand changes too, right? So that's, you submit it to DOT and they may say, oh no, you have to do it this way or this way. And then we have to go back and say, oh, well, what we thought we were going to do is not that. And, we're not doing anyone any favors with that either. Right. So we're trying to figure out a way where we can keep people informed, but also let them know that, nothing's guaranteed because we don't have final approval yet. Do you know what I mean?
I totally get that. I think I would love, I don't want to speak for you, Julie, but you said something today, like, you're going to fight for a plan that's going to preserve as many trees as possible. And I really feel like people aren't hearing, I totally get like going into the weeds the way you and Tim and Neil, you just did, but I also feel like a lot of people don't know you. I don't, they don't know the Millbrook Preserve wouldn't be what it is today without Julie. They don't know that you're a PhD ecologist, that the Shade Tree Commission would never be what it is without you, and the rest of you tree huggers too. Like, you guys are going to do this in a way that is going to cut the least number of trees and shrubs and, try as best as you can to accommodate the diversity of opinions that you're hearing. And I'm like, say it out loud.
Well, I mean,
you don't have to.
Some trees, some trees are going to have to come down, right?
I understand that.
And we're going to plant some new trees, right, to replace those, and they'll eventually, be big old beautiful trees. I mean, the other thing, we need to remember that the goal for this is to improve safety, right? That right now, this road, not everyone has access to a car, and there are people that need to walk and ride their bikes, and then there are some people that like to walk and ride their bikes, and especially lately, where I think we're recognizing that. And so the goal is really to make this as safe as possible. And yes, some trees are going to have to cut down, but hopefully this road is safer, and we don't have to worry about, kids riding their bikes to the Moriello pool, or riding to the River to Ridge, or the walkway over the Hudson, right? Or going down to get a slice of pizza at Village Pizza, right? That you're not taking your life in your hands. So that I want to remind everyone, the goal is yes, we don't want to cut, we want to cut as few trees as possible, but we want to maximize safety. And that doesn't mean we're going to cut down more trees, but that's why we're trying so hard to make this, as safe as possible.
Hey, Neil, it's Bill Murray. Quick question. Have you had direct contact with the residents in a letter form or some sort of mailer to them, giving them an update? This is where we are to date. This is what we're thinking. These are the dates we're going to examine this. That sort of information sent to them directly?
We don't have a date for the meeting yet. We're still waiting to hear back and do the plan. We met individually with everyone on Henry W. with a Zoom meeting. And that's, we presented them with some of the initial ideas and said, we're working on the preliminary plan. And when we have the preliminary plan, which we don't have yet, we said, then we're going to have a public meeting. right? So I don't even know when the public meeting is. Tim just asked me, so we can't send a letter out to anyone because I can't even answer Tim right now.
Neil,
just
that
put
Zoom
the
meeting you're
chat.
talking about, this is Julie. Is that the one with Alta Planning? Or,
Yes, we met individually with residents along Henry W. and set up, individual meetings with them, and mostly to kind of get back, to hear their thoughts and ideas and make sure that their voices were heard and that they weren't, just lumped in with everyone and in a public meeting, right? So we wanted to be extra thoughtful and make sure that, if you live there, then you had an opportunity to talk to us directly.
and we also had a town board meeting where we sort of, dedicated about an hour or so to a discussion, answering all questions that we could of residents of HW. So we I think one issue is that I was told that Alta showed some residents a map that somehow indicated, a lot of the trees that they're concerned about. So I don't actually know about that, the details, but that's what someone, a couple people have mentioned.
Well,
So that's, I think
it's
it's not that they're just sort of coming out of the blue with, oh, I'm worried about this tree.
well, it showed the preliminary
Some
survey.
were shown a map, and I don't know much more about that.
They were
actually.
shown the preliminary survey, and
A survey.
that showed where the town's right of way
There you go.
is.
Okay, so it didn't even have a hint of a plan. It was just that this is what we could do because it's the right of way.
It
Right.
showed people the land that they own and the land that the town owns. And, that is
So
sometimes
The
surprising.
worry, I guess, I guess that's the problem. The worry is that then engendered this idea that because we could, we might.
And I get it. That's very stressful to then not know
Yeah.
what the final plan is or the preliminary plan is stressful.
Right.
And I'm just asking people to, before we get too upset and say like, oh, well, this tree or that tree is going to get cut down. Let's talk about the preliminary plan once it's out there. And when we know which trees are close to getting cut down, we're not going to, like Tim said, the goal is not to go through and wipe out every tree in the 50-foot right of way. The goal is to impact as little as possible and get the project done.
Neil, it's David. Can you just maybe also letting residents know, what does the process look like, that when we present the preliminary plan and then there's a public meeting, what is the rest of that process like? I imagine some people are afraid the preliminary plan is the plan and we're just going to jam it through and that's all it is if we like it or whatever. So can you discuss a little bit about what is the process by which additional feedback is taken into consideration before we come to a decision?
Well, I think that's the goal of the goal of the public meeting, is to make sure that everyone's feedback is heard. Then, the engineers go and they look back, they see if some changes can be made. They also, it has to get presented to DOT to make sure it's in compliance with everything. And then, the preliminary plan, it's preliminary, it's not final. There'll be, probably the town board will be presented with, well, here are your options for what you could potentially do. Well, if you want to save that tree, maybe you could make it narrower. Maybe you could, not have a grassy strip there or something like that. So I think, but they're trying to do as much of that as possible. And then there are opportunities to make changes after that. So, preliminary is preliminary. It's not final. It's what the budget allows for and what the town board wants.
All right, so this is a helpful update, and I think we'll all hang on and look forward to seeing that preliminary design. And I think we can relay to members of the community that that's exactly what it will be, a preliminary design, and then you'll seek additional feedback. And if there are rough edges to be smoothed out, you'll deal with them accordingly. So, it's a work in progress. So thanks for the update.
I just want to give out the project website, which is walkbikehwd.weebly.com. So WALKBIKEHWD.WEEBLY.com. And if you go, there's lots of information, and you can sign up for email list to be, when there's updates for the project, you'll be notified, and there's also space there if you have any current questions that you could put it in there. And I just put that on the village's Facebook page.
Good stuff. Okay, skate garden.
Yeah,
Skateboard? Is it skateboard garden update or skate garden update?
No, skate garden update, because, we want to make sure all skaters are included. I'm a roller skater myself these days. So, just wanted to share that project is, still continuing to go full steam ahead. I know we have some awesome volunteers who are away at school right now and want to be in the loop. So I'm going to do my best to use announcements at meetings as a good time to quickly update everyone. We are having a general meeting. So anyone who's interested in updates or wants to volunteer in terms of creating some cool art and design about the project, or helping with a fundraising campaign, or really anything at all, even just input, feedback, etc., is welcome. So that meeting is happening this Sunday, September 13th at 7:00 p.m. via Zoom. And tonight I'll be making like a Facebook event and a digital flyer to share around. So, I'll make sure everybody gets that Zoom. Get in touch with me if you need that link for Sunday night. But I'm excited because we've gotten a couple of rounds of initial drawings for the project following the few site visits that the mayor and I had shared updates on previously. And, it's just really great starting to see a very long time dream starting to be realized. Can I give a quick census update?
Yes, and then I just wanted to make an announcement as well.
Cool. So just a quick reminder, the census is still going on. We have until the end of this month. It's September 30th is the deadline. We actually have gotten a little uptick in our responses in both the village and the town since our last village board meeting 2 weeks ago. So thank you to everyone for doing that. It's, I think, related to the door-to-door operations that have been focused especially on the village, as we are one of the state's most hard to count regions because of our very high renter population. So we're getting closer to to 60. Right now we're at 58.7 response rate, which is really good for the village. So, but it's not good enough. It's not at 100. So I do want to note that if a census enumerator stops by, or you receive a note from the census, be it a piece of mail or one of their sticky notes that says they did come by, and you have already done the census, maybe you're like me and you've, moved it to 3 different apartments in the village so far this year alone. Never fear. It doesn't mean there's been a glitch in the system. I got a few emails about that. It means you were counted at your other spot. But what you need to do is you need to get in touch with your landlord or property manager, however you guys normally communicate, and urge them to please contact the previous tenants. Whoever lived there on April 1st, 2020, that census day, seems like they might not have been counted. And they need to go ahead and fill out that census for their April 1st, 2020 address so that we can get actually a complete count.
You good, Alex?
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. Thank you. Awesome.
Cool. Do we have any public here? Well, I don't think we have a public hearing, do we?
Could I just do the project resilience announcement?
Great.
The county just announced yesterday that phase 2 of Project Resilience will be money in the form of subsidies and scholarships for childcare and school age programs. So if you are in need of help paying for childcare or school age programs because schools are 100% remote right now, you can visit the county website, covid19.ulstercountynewyork.gov/schools, and get information about whether or not you qualify for assistance. You can also call 845-443-8888. That information is on our resource page, which is bit.ly/NPK12 working parents. And also, just so folks know, the Y program is now opening up at the Lenape location next week. So if you are interested in Y Academy, go to the Ulster County Y website and check out Y Academy. That will now be available at Lenape. Lots more information at our resource page, again, which is bit.ly/NPK12 working parents. Thanks.
Any other announcements? So public hearing is just a placeholder on this agenda, right? We don't have any public hearings tonight. Okay, public comment. Did anyone leave us a public comment besides the one that we have that was previously
I don't
submitted?
see anything.
Does someone want to summarize?
No public comments.
Someone want to summarize what was included in Liat's public comment? No one wants to summarize it?
There were two basic ideas. I think there were two ideas. Proposal to the town of New Paltz to give tax breaks to landlords who are willing to lower the price of their apartments, linked to minimum wage, which would be $660 per month for a single tenant. I don't know if there's a legal process for that. Alex might know. And then also to spend less money on police and more on affordable housing.
Oh, sorry, I meant to respond. Actually, I've been looking into if there's any way to do that. I know I'm always like, hey, I've been talking to my friends in Ithaca, but this is another topic I just threw over at the Ithaca Tenant Union folks, and City of Ithaca Councilman Stephen, fellow former Pergy, and I haven't gotten a response yet, so I'll circle back, but I thought it was a cool idea. I just have no idea.
Okay, any other? I think, Ariana, you said there were no other public comments?
None that I see.
Okay, so then, KT, do you want to walk us through item 1 on our joint business agenda?
So item 1 is climate equity justice related items. It's just our first item where we intentionally go through our agenda to highlight and name anything that's related to climate equity or justice. 2 items right there are the police reform review process and the issues for working parents, which I just made, basically gave that update. We don't need to do that again. I don't know what's going to come up in the discussions with the county, but certainly the Climate Smart Resiliency Planning Tool discussion is related to climate, as is the Millbrook Preserve learning areas, as is, well, what is that item MOU? I was thinking it was water related.
Wells.
Yeah, so it's water related, so it's climate related, I'm sure, in some way, shape, or form. And then on our regular agenda, nothing's super jumping out at me. I would say short-term rental law in terms of economic justice. And economic justice in terms of our statement about the Kingstonian pilot. And then as far as reporting on the police reform process, we've got Essie Lewis, who's the team's spokesperson, and she's going to speak for the group. So I know Diana's here, she's serving. Is there anybody else here for us to thank? We've got Essie and Diana, who are serving on the 5-person police reform steering committee. But I'll just pass it over to you, Essie.
Thank you, PT. I think that Diana and I are the only ones here this evening. So I just want to say thank you for having me. It is a pleasure to serve New Paltz and be on this committee. So thanks. So first and foremost, the Police Reform and Reinvention Steering Committee we meet weekly. We have established roles. I have the distinct pleasure of being the representative, which is why I'm here before you in this capacity. We have some co-facilitators, Randall Laverette and Diana Armistead, who's here with us. And then Jennifer Berry is the secretary. And we have our roles listed on the town site. So thus far, we have started conducting some research. We have a graduate student doing research to find statistics on similarly situated police departments so that we can compare statistics. We have been and continue to be in the process of receiving an overview of the police department by Chief Lucchese. And our next steps are to meet with community groups to hear from them. And for the meeting with the community groups, as well as our research assistant, we will soon be asking maybe for a small budget. And maybe that will be in our next meeting or through the town board, we'll be doing that. And I mean, that's pretty much it as far as an overview. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have. And I do plan to be here for updates for this joint meeting.
Thank you, Essie, and everybody. But thank you for that report. I believe Dan, who couldn't be here tonight, we did get asked about the budget question, and Dan basically said, you know, tell us what you want, let us know what you need, and put a price tag attached to it. And so not do it in the abstract, but say what you need and then bring it to the town, right?
Perfect. So we will do that. I'll have it added to our agenda for our next meeting, and we'll come back with a number.
To be clear, I can't speak for the town. I'm just paraphrasing Dan. Town can chime in now if they so desire.
Yeah, David, I just want to say thank you so much for your service. It's wonderful, and please, like KT said, ask for what you need. You know, as much as you can see forward.
Thank you.
And money's tight this year. The governor has already told us they're taking money back from CHIP. So we are, it's not going to be a good budget season.
Okay. Noted.
Do you and Diana have any questions for any of us?
I don't think we have any questions thus far. Again, I will be here for the joint meeting, so if we do, I will bring them forward.
Okay. Don't feel obligated to stay the whole time.
Thank you so much. I was just going to say I have a small person I have to get in bed, so I am going to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, and send thanks.
Thank you.
Will do. Have a good night.
So yeah, I think I covered the second one in my announcements, so we're good on that.
Okay, so I see Eve's here. I don't know if Jim is here as well, but does Eve want to walk us through county discussion?
Sure. So I came up with about maybe 4 items that might be specifically of interest, and would be great to hear your feedback and answer any questions if you have them. So, and I'm just not in a particular order except for the resolution order because it's easier for me. So the first, there's a local law that has a public hearing coming up, and that's to require that all businesses that have an AED have a Narcan kit that's included with the AED. I think there are some questions about, because sometimes these AEDs are located in a place that's just an office that 2 people are working in and not necessarily the same kind of public location. I think they're fine tuning what would be the law, what would be required, which places, but this could conceivably include hairdressers and delis and any other groups, places like that that are required by the state to have an AED. They don't necessarily have to have a whole separate container for the Narcan. It could just be a Narcan kit that is in that box that the AED system is in. Also, there's the question, AEDs, there's a state law that requires that there's at least one person who's skilled in using it, the AED. So then the idea would be to at least suggest that there's at least one person at that business who knows how to use the Narcan kit. Any questions with that or thoughts before I move to the next one?
Thank you for that. Just thank you.
Okay.
And,
All right. The next is the famous sales tax agreement with the city of Kingston. So it looks pretty much like the previous year's sales tax agreement with the city of Kingston. Not unsurprisingly, myself, the legislator from Ulster and the legislator from Saugerties, the people who are the towns and villages that are most impacted by the inequity of the distribution are most vocal against this. That conversation did pressure a request to the comptroller and she was referring to you, Tim, and the information you provided New Paltz, but really pulling together some documentation of what the contributions are for the towns and villages. There are several, I'm not sure what's going to happen on whether, my guess is this is going to pass. I plan on voting against it. But I think I'm probably in the minority. But perhaps before the vote comes up, we'll have that detailed information about the contributions. I'll say that Legislator Cahill is extremely vocal because Ulster does, is a major retail source. And so that's where that is at. I don't know if you have any questions or comments on that one.
I do have a question about that. The Supervisors and Mayors Association had been talking about adding some language in terms of like a high water mark. So if there was like a number in terms of, what the county expected in terms of gross sales tax, based on, I don't know, let's say like a 2020 budgeted number. And then if there was overage in subsequent years, during the term of this agreement, then that overage would be split differently than how the agreement currently reads. Has there been any discussion about including, that kind of different way of allocating the revenue?
Right. So, primarily, you probably know, I did attempt to put through a resolution following your suggestion again, to have whatever agreement be just for 1 year so that we can actually have these kinds of conversations of these alternative means of distribution. And that did not get the support. it didn't even get into committee, and I can talk about why if you want to know. And so unfortunately, actual conversations about alternatives haven't had a place at the table at all because it was shut down. I'll say that Legislator Cahill refers more to shared service agreements that are reflective of what the county, I guess, has done in the past. I think that at this point, it's going to, if it doesn't get approved, if the legislature doesn't approve it, then we do have that opportunity to posit these other things. But at this point, I don't think the executive's office will even consider any amendments to the resolution. I'm happy to make a suggestion for a whereas or a therefore, but I would be surprised. I'll say, yeah, but I'm happy to bring that into the conversation.
Yeah, thanks again for trying to bring up that idea of limiting the term, from 5 years to 1 year. I recognize that was originally something that I floated as a concept. So I was really appreciative that you at least tried to, bring that into the conversation. Unfortunately, it wasn't considered anything serious to consider, but you were clearly trying to like, hey, have we considered this? Have we considered that? And that was one of the ideas. So thanks again for trying. So, but Supervisor Quigley has been really clear with me about this overage idea, about distributing money over a certain threshold, at a different ratio. So that seemed like a possibility, or something that would be considered palatable by the city and the county. So has there been any traction regarding that concept?
So like I said, it never got on the table because discussions about alternatives, like the legislature was basically left out of any of these conversations. And part of the problem, unfortunately, is that when I had presented the resolution of the 1 year kind of hiatus or pause or limit the agreement to that, the message from the executive's office to the supervisors and mayors, basically the message I got in an email from Shannon was that the fear was that given the challenges in these fiscal times, that the 3% you're getting now would be even less. If you don't agree, it's basically like, I'll take these crumbs because I'm afraid my crumbs will be smaller. I think that if you and Neil could get some kind of documentation to me or to the legislature or whatever from the supervisors and mayors articulating this concept, as opposed to just me saying this, where they're going to just come back and say, well, we don't know if the supervisors and mayors want this either. So I think if you can get something to me, I'm happy to push it and present it. But I think that they've been given, the legislature and the executive's office are standing ground on this idea that the supervisors and mayors don't want anything else but what this deal is. I don't think that's true, but that's what they're believing.
Yeah, Neil, what's your memory say? Because I felt like our group spoke about it. I thought the Supervisors Association was comfortable with this overage concept.
I think you're right. I think we even had language written up.
So can you send something to me?
That's
Eve, sort of from everybody?
Eve, let's do that. We'll get you whatever we did, and I thought we voted on it as an organization.
I agree, Tim. I thought the supervisors were pretty unanimous in their support of that idea.
All right, we'll get it to Eve.
Thank you.
And I thought
we had this conversation. Thank you, first off, just for coming to our meetings. It's glorious to have a county legislator at our joint meetings and actually be working together. So secondly, thank you for understanding and advocating for the sales tax remedy that is needed. I was going to ask you, because it's always just befuddled me why the other towns and villages wouldn't act in their own self-interest. It seems to me fiduciary responsibility to advocate for the county to lower their share. I mean, to restate again, because it's important, we've always advocated for a redistributive formula that would increase all of the towns and villages share, decrease the 85%, which is well above the norm for a county to retain.
85.5.
Thank you for that 0.5, Tim.
Yeah, I agree.
So I really appreciate that, all of that you're here and that you're advocating for that. And I was going to ask you, like, why did they not act in their own self-interest?
Could tell you it's 2 words. Pat Ryan. He called them immediately and spoke to them. And basically after that conversation, I got a message from Shannon basically say that the feeling was fear that if they don't accept this, they'll get something worse.
No, I think the question is, why don't county legislators be advocates for their constituents?
Because their supervisors are telling them not to.
No, but this has been ongoing for years.
I'm telling you, I mean, they'll say to me privately, this infuriated me. In fact, I couldn't even get it in committee because I couldn't get enough of the legislators to sign on. And they would say, I agree with you 100%, but my supervisor said no. And they all followed I was in a fortunate situation where I didn't have to decide whether I disagreed with you and Tim, because I did agree with you and Tim. But this is what they were coming back with. And in the message that I got from Shannon, it was quite clearly they are afraid that if they push this issue now, given COVID and all this other stuff, that they will get less than the crumbs that they get already.
I mean, listen, in an ironic twist of fate, we weren't reliant on sales tax so much and aren't going to get hit in the way that other places were overly reliant on sales tax. I get it. There's a lot of anxiety surrounding all of the cuts that we're going to be looking at. And that was part of our argument, why we wanted to just say, could we just do this again in a year when we know more?
Right. And we need to be united. And so I was hoping I would have those legislators supporting this. But again, I needed to have 4 sign on to the resolution just to get it heard in committee, and I couldn't get them enough.
Well, I hope you can, I know you have 2 more items, so we should get to those. And I hope you can stay for the discussion of the Kingstonian pilot.
And again, if you give me some documentation, Tim Neal, saying, positing, especially if we can word it as an add-on to the existing resolution, I'll fight for it. I don't know what will happen, but I'm happy to push it. The next is an interesting one. It's about whether the county can and should dip into the tax stabilization fund. And the idea is that, for anyone who's not familiar, that they legally, you can, if you have used up any other possible revenue or any possible funds that you have, which is already questionable whether we have that, then you can dip into the tax stabilization fund. But you have to reimburse it within 4 years. And the concept that the county is doing is putting everything that they believe is FEMA reimbursable, taking the tax money from the tax stabilization fund for everything that they believe is FEMA reimbursable, with the hopes that the expectation they'll get that money back. However, the issues we have are, one, it's way more important to be looking at this along with what the proposed budget is. So we're arguing we want to be talking about pulling money from tax stabilization when we see the larger budget for 2021. But also, FEMA is only just paying us for Hurricane Sandy or whatever it was, like 4 years ago. Like, it takes a long time for FEMA to pay. It's only 75%. And so several of us are very concerned about this dip. And so far it's only been postponed in committee, looking for more information, but that is something you should be aware of, because I don't know what the full, I imagine there's I don't know. I only know Ways and Means. I don't know what the larger body is feeling in terms of support, or most of us, not most of us, a couple of us want to postpone that conversation till we have a budget in front of us, because we're very concerned about dipping into that fund. Any questions? And then I have one more. Okay, the last one is, it's actually memorializing resolution, but for those of you who are not familiar with it, it seemed like a year ago, the state passed a law requiring pharmacies to have takebacks for medications that you cannot dispose of. And specifically, this was an issue around opioids. And because that's a primary pathway that individuals get addicted to opioids. And so it got finally passed by the legislature in the state and signed by Cuomo, but DOH is not moving. They're not doing what they need to do. We are lucky that Diedrich's actually on their own is doing the right thing, and they have take back there. But other than Diedrich's, you have to go to a police precinct in order to get rid of these excess medications. And people all the time, the young people are getting their hands on these. I just lost a 21-year-old a month ago who died of an overdose. So it's a memorializing, but it's basically asking New York State to get this done. So anything you all could do to also push this point that of getting, and I checked with Senator Metzger, she's been reaching out to DOH. They're not responding to her either. And so we just, it's a law, it's been passed, but DOH has to move on it. They claim COVID, but they weren't moving on it even before COVID. And this is a very big deal. And every day that we do not have a way to dispose of these medications is another day that some kid can get their hands on them.
Please send that to us and we can pass it as well.
Yep. That's it. Unless you have questions for me.
I did have did you guys have a question on that topic? I had a question on a different topic. I just wanted to see, Eve, if you had any understanding of the Ulster County Legislature's involvement in the Kingstonian project. Do you guys get to vote on anything? How's that work?
That's a good question. I mean, nothing has come before us with the Kingstonian. I mean, I've been listening to conversations, but there's nothing in front of us. So can I guess what would be ultimately? Yeah, I don't have the answer. I can look into finding out what we'll ultimately have a say in, or whether we'll have a say in anything, but currently nothing is in front of us.
Yeah, that'd be great if you could.
Commonly that you don't. So we're hearing that you do, and we haven't been able to get clarity on that.
Okay, I'll find out.
School boards and the local boards, this is something we've complained about in New Paltz, that we don't have a say. So we were surprised to hear that you did and needed clarity on that.
Right. I wonder, I mean, only coming from my planning board days, whether it's a coordinated action that includes the county as well, possibly. I wonder if that, well, I'll find out. I'll find out what role, if any, we'll have and get back to you.
Eve, I just shared with you the draft that the village board will be considering later regarding the Kingstonian. We have a draft position statement. So I just shot it over to you so you can look at it in advance of our conversation later this evening if you want.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so we have some folks who are here to chat with us. Sorry to keep you guys for so long, Melinda and Brent. I'll just let you take it away.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Melinda Herzog. I'm the Healthy Communities Program Leader at Cornell Cooperative Extension of Ulster County. And Brent, you want to introduce yourself?
Certainly. My name is Brent Goach. I'm a resource educator with Cooperative Extension of Ulster County.
So we've basically been working on a project on climate resilience, and we'd like to share the results of what we found and some recommendations. I realize the agenda said that this is a village presentation, but actually we worked with both the town and the village this year. So we have a presentation that will actually address both the town and the village with recommendations and identify some strengths and areas of opportunity from the climate resilience tool. We do have a PowerPoint to share. Would Brent be able to do that?
Yeah, is it possible for me to share my screen? Is that okay?
You can absolutely share your screen.
Okay.
Did it? Okay.
Awesome. So Brent, if you want to bring up the first slide,
Yep.
I'm just going to take you through the beginning. So first I want to say thank you so much. We worked with so many wonderful people in the town and in the village, including the supervisor, Neil, and mayor. And in the town, we worked with Chris Marks and Stacy Delariti and Kelly Preston. In the village, we worked with Ariana. She was amazing in getting us through the tool, and Blue Terrilliger and Corey Worthman. And of course, we couldn't have done any of it without the help of Janelle Piotr, and who's here tonight, and Amanda Gatto, who really helped us organize everything around the town and the village and all the key players, and kind of open doors for us. So we really appreciate their assistance as well. And we hope that this is something that'll be very useful for you. So I just thought we'd start with a quick explanation. This is a climate smart resiliency planning tool that we did. It's a project that we worked on with both the town and the village. And Brent, if you could just advance to the next slide. So this is part of what we call the Hudson River or Hudson Estuary Watershed Resilience Project. It is funded by the New York State DEC's Hudson River Estuary Program. It's also funded by the New York State Water Resources Institute. Since 2012, Cornell University and several of our cooperative extensions in the region have been working in partnership with the New York State Water Resources Institute at Cornell University. We've had support from the DEC's Environmental Conservation's Hudson River Estuary Program. We've been working on a lot of projects in climate resilience with them. So it's a combination of research, demonstration, educational outreach projects, addressing the challenges of flooding, stream and watershed management, and of course, climate change. And currently, as part of our partnership, we've actually just changed our name to Climate Resiliency Partnership. The counties that are involved in that are Dutchess, Columbia Green, Ulster, as well as Rockland and Rensselaer. Next slide, Brent. So in 2020, we do have a focus where we're working with communities to support specific certification actions. So this is all about getting certified in New York State's Climate Smart Certification Program, which you guys are all doing a great job in getting this going and have been working steadily on it. We're fully aware of the Climate Smart Task Force work in both the town and the village, and applaud your efforts. And I was excited just to see the books that are being shared amongst you. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. So you're doing great work. This year, all of our work with this Watershed Resiliency Partnership that I'm speaking of focused on assisting different municipalities in more climate resilience in planning and other kinds of work. So what we did as a group with all 5 of our counties, the kinds of work we do, we assisted 2 communities in creating road stream crossing inventories and management plans. We're working with 9 communities to lead them through reviewing all of their current codes, ordinances, and plans. And that's what this is. This is the Climate Smart Resiliency Planning Tool. And then we make recommendations on where you can begin incorporating climate resiliency into your policies and projects. We're actually also working with 5 communities to review all the work they've done in the past few years that would qualify them for credit in the Climate Smart Communities program. We call this a Climate Smart Assessment. So we also do that for communities with this funding. help them get their certification and even help them with submission in some cases. And we do climate visioning with some communities. This year, we also are working with 2 communities on incorporating climate resiliency into comprehensive plans. So this is some of the work that we do that can go beyond what we're about to show you tonight, some of the things that we can offer to you in the future. Next slide, Brent. So the tool. What you see on the screen is basically the first page of the tool. It's a community plan checklist. What we do is we go through all of the, basically the plans that you have for your town and your village. Each municipality, we look to see what you already have completed. And every municipality is different. You know, nobody has all of them completed. This isn't to make sure that you've hit everything on the checklist. This is to see what you do have available. And what we do is that helps us identify, by reviewing these plans, we help to identify some of the gaps that we might find in the beginning of the planning process and areas, you know, some of your strengths. Some of your municipalities have an amazing array of plans, and we look to see what are the strengths and where there are opportunities. So actually completing this tool for we have done for both the town and the village will allow you to apply for 6 points in the Climate Smart Communities program. So the report that you have will help you get more points. And of course, more points raises your possibility of your level, whether you're bronze, silver level. And then, you know, you're certainly more eligible for more grant funding to apply for from the state. Can we have the next slide? So what are the benefits of becoming climate smart? I mean, really, you know, your climate smart task forces are really very well organized and are doing a great job with this. But basically, you are more eligible for free technical assistance, more guidance, you get more networking and some recognition, and of course, more funding. So it is a general framework or a roadmap to the certification, you know, provide you with opportunities to do more work that will bring you towards a goal of more climate resilience, to address any of the 130 actions that are outlined in the program. Communities that become certified receive statewide recognition, as you know, and you can also score higher on competitive grants. Next slide. So the process in itself, as I shared, we basically took a look at a lot of your plans and a lot of the things that you already have in your documents, your comprehensive plan, any open space plans, anything that we have on that list, we took a look at and basically reviewed them using the tool. And then, as I said, we did work it was lovely to work with members of the town and the village to complete questions that we couldn't answer by reviewing plans. And that included things that had to do with your outreach on emergency preparedness or what kind of training you're offering to you know, staff in the town and the village. So these conversations helped us to complete the tool and then to be able to provide recommendations in the report. So next slide. So again, this is just a little bit more about the process. I really should change that picture and put up a Zoom screen because that's really what it looked like all year. It was just basically, you know, we did everything online this year once March came along. And we were very fortunate to have that tool to be able to help us to do our work as everyone has. But yeah, it didn't really look like that in the picture this year. But we did. We met with, of course, building inspectors and DPW and, you know, a lot of your town officials. And we're very appreciative. Next slide. So the deliverables and outcomes that we have in the completed tool were, again, to report gaps, areas of opportunity. I prefer to refer to it as that way, and also recommendations. And to identify your strengths, and you know, you really should acknowledge your strengths in moving forward and build upon them. Next slide. So the planning areas that are covered in the tool, the checklist is we talked about, but also identifying risk and vulnerability, public outreach and engagement, planning integration, disaster preparedness and recovery, and hazard mitigation implementation. And I believe, next slide, this is where I turn it over to Brent.
Yep,
who
that's
has done the majority of the review of all of your documents. And he put together the recommendations, and he's going to share them for the town and the village. And Brent, I think you should probably start with the explanation of why some of it looks the same ahead of time.
Yeah, certainly, Melinda. Yeah, so if you look at the recommendations documents for the town to village, and there's separate documents for each, they are very, very similar. And the main reason that they're similar, and the reason why we're combining the presentations into one presentation, is that you do so many things together. With climate resiliency planning, with a lot of your just municipal planning, there's just a lot of joint documents. So the recommendations would be just as a result, they're very similar. In addition to that, we have to work under the parameters of the Climate Smart Resiliency Planning tool, that spreadsheet that we showed you at the beginning, or at least the first page of that. And we could offer up recommendations that we kind of make up, if you will, but it wouldn't be based on anything on the tool. So we're trying to work under the parameters of the tool, and because of that, we're somewhat limited on the types of recommendations we could offer. I think that's probably adequate, Melinda, right? Unless you want to add anything else.
No, I think so. I think the main message is that because a lot of your documents are joint documents, and of course you have some geographic similarities there, just a little bit of an overlap. Some of the things that we are recommending are both for the town and the village.
Okay, so with that being said, I will now talk about the different areas of the plan. So give me 1 second here. There we go. So I first want to talk about the strengths. As Melinda mentioned, there's many different strengths that both the town and the village have. And again, I should actually, before I start, what we're going to do in the next several slides here are just very much the highlights. We go into more detail in the actual recommendations document. So with regards to the strengths that both the town and the village have, both are a part of the National Flood Insurance Program. And by participating in that program, your residents are able to access relatively low-cost flood insurance. And I say relatively because, as we all know, flood insurance rates are going up, and they will continue to go up as years go on. But having said that, the NFIP policies are probably the most affordable policies out there. There are some on the private market, and you're seeing that more and more. But at this point in time, the NFIP policies are still probably the most affordable. In addition to that, the town and village have an open space plan that provides recommendations for protecting natural resources and other environmentally sensitive areas. As we mentioned just a moment ago, there's several joint town-village documents as well as initiatives that provide, a coordinated approach to becoming more resilient, and that includes things like your greenhouse gas emissions inventory, your climate vulnerability assessment. You have a joint build-out and fiscal analysis. All these documents put together because you combine them with both municipalities are really a great strength. A lot of joint town and village stuff isn't quite as strong as this, so it's something you really should be proud of. And in addition to that, you're both climate smart communities. And as we mentioned before, that gets you on the track to gain points in the system and have all that technical expertise available to you and potentially be at a more advantageous position when you go for grants. So there's also some opportunities that both municipalities could access. And the first one I want to mention is that you could seek out training opportunities for municipal staff in areas of resilience, particularly in flood mitigation, because at least at this point in time, that's probably the biggest natural disaster scenario that you'll be facing in the near future, at least. And there's different ways of going about that. There's certainly lots of local and state programs and classes that you could participate in. I always recommend, when I do this talk with municipalities, I always recommend trying to investigate FEMA's Emergency Management Institute. There's campus-based and online courses. Of course, right now they're only doing the online courses, but I've done both. I've done both the online and campus-based courses, and they're all wonderful. And by the way, they're free of charge, basically. So that's something that you can access at no cost to you guys, and you can train municipal members on everything from resilience to mitigation to disaster preparedness and recovery, a whole host of issues, and I really can't recommend it enough. In addition to that, we recommend that you participate in a Nature Conservancy Community Resilience Building Workshop, and Melinda and I have helped facilitate one of these, and for both the village and the town of Saugerties. So if something like this were to happen in New Paltz, I imagine it would happen in a very similar fashion. And as Melinda mentioned, of course, because of COVID, we're not doing this stuff in person right now. They'd probably be moved to online. And who knows what next year will bring, if it'll be an in-person or an online type scenario, but be that as it may, what this workshop does is it really gets a great cross-section of your community. It goes across demographics. It gets folks from the business community, from the environmental community, municipal staff, there's regular citizens who are interested in, the future of the town or the village, together in one location. You really hash out and figure out what your assets are, your resources that are available to you, and they'll do a lot of visioning and determining what your goals and visions are for the community. And once that conversation is done, usually it's roughly about a day's worth of brainstorming. The Nature Conservancy folks will take that information back and create a document that almost acts like a roadmap for you, so you can start to implement some of those community visioning sessions. So that's something, again, probably for next year, but we recommend as you look into that. In addition, we recommend you look into leveraging the Climate Smart Resiliency Planning tool for points in the Climate Smart Communities program. As we've mentioned before, and we'll mention again, the more points you get, the more advantageous it is to access some of those state grants. Whoops, went ahead. So the first section I want to talk about is that vulnerability and risk assessment. And under this, our first recommendation is that you incorporate estimates of future financial losses resulting from severe storms or flooding into your plans. And these are everything from capital improvement plans to fiscal type plans, budgets, just to take into consideration any damages that might occur to infrastructure or town property as a result of natural disasters. Again, I use the term flooding a lot because, again, that's probably the natural disaster New Paltz is most experienced with, and probably the one that you're going to have consistently in the future. So take that into consideration as you're making these plans. And I hope I'm not messing this up. I'm almost certain it's the town of New Paltz that's working with Woodhull Research Center to do additional flood mapping, and that you'll get some additional data from the research that they're doing to help with that, with those planning purposes. We also recommend that you train municipal managers on the use of available risk and vulnerability tools. I use an example for FEMA's HAZUS MH. That's a geographic information system software tool, probably most useful in your building department for your building department staffs. And that helps to catalog damages after a natural disaster. And then we also recommend taking the existing build-out analysis that you have and overlay it with risk areas, particularly the FEMA special flood hazard area, and see where there might be some overlaps for things that are incompatible. So, for example, if you look at your current zoning, you see that you have an area that's zoned for high density development, and it so happens to be on top of a special flood hazard area. That's an opportunity where you have to think, well, maybe we should make that area more restrictive zoning and not necessarily have high density there. Move the high density zoning to someplace that's outside of that flood hazard area. It's a little safer. The next area we want to talk about is the public outreach and engagement section. And our first recommendation is to inform residents about available disaster resources for your municipal website, television, radio, social media. And you're doing this to a great extent already. And we want to take it a little bit further, and particularly this is for your website, to include, or your websites, I should say, and include links to different documents, such as the ASPCA's disaster preparedness document for domesticated animals, different FEMA documents like FEMA's Are You Ready guide, FEMA's Homeowner's Guide to Retrofitting, as well as links to FEMA and Department of Homeland Security resources for people to develop their own family evacuation plans or emergency preparedness kits. These are all links you can put on your website. Again, it helps you net points under that action, and it's good, useful information to have for your residents. We also recommend publicizing the availability of floodplain information to the insurance, the real estate community, so real estate agents, lenders, folks, real estate brokers, those types of folks. And so what's kind of unique in a sense here in Ulster County is that there's a course available. I happen to co-teach it with a colleague of mine from the Ulster County Department of the Environment. It's called the Floodplain Management for Real Estate Professionals. And this is a continuing education course for folks who are real estate agents or real estate brokers. And we teach them all about the National Flood Insurance Program and all the regulations that would apply to them. And it gets them a better understanding of what it means to have property in the floodplain and the regulations associated with it. Unfortunately, again, because of COVID, we've had to cancel those courses for this year, but we're hoping to restart them next year, whether in person or online. It's a little bit difficult to do it online because of the way the Board of Realtors does continuing education credits, but we're hoping to have that settled for next year. So contact the Ulster County Board of Realtors, and they'll have information about those courses as they become available.
And Brent, could you just share the cost of that course?
Free of charge.
Thanks.
100% free. Well, I take that back. There may be a fee that the Ulster County Board of Realtors charges if you're a member, but as far as like money that I get or you have to take the course, totally free of charge. So, and the final one for this category is consider developing a public outreach plan focused on climate outreach and engagement. And this is really just an opportunity for you guys to think, really for your Climate Smart Committee, to think about how can you be, unique? How can you really be creative in engaging residents and visitors to the community about, climate change and resiliency and mitigation? And you can do kind of what you, I don't say what you want, but things that you might want to do. So for example, it could be something as simple as having a booth or a table at a community day, festival, Earth Day event, just talking about, what the committee's been doing, what the town, what the village has been doing to be more resilient and getting feedback from the public. Or you could do something maybe a little bit different, have a kiosk installed that shows a high water mark from a recent flood event, and have another, marker for where a future high water mark might be, given, increasing precipitation patterns. The possibilities are endless, and it really just depends on what you want to do and, how you want to engage the community, and there's points you can get for that. The next section is integration of municipal plans. And we recommend that when you go to update your town and village comprehensive plans to include sustainability elements in them, and really include them right up front. Your goals and objectives, your visioning statements, your mission statements, and really lay out what you intend to do to be more resilient, how you hope to mitigate climate change, and be safe. Try to mitigate damage from floods and other natural disasters, and include that right up front and throughout the comprehensive plans. We also would recommend consider creating a local waterfront revitalization plan. And a lot of folks say, oh, this doesn't apply to this. This only applies to communities along the Hudson River. And that's actually not true. There's a lot of inland waterways. The Walk Hill is one of them, which is eligible for LWRP funding from the Department of State. And I think this is a really great opportunity for you, if you want to pursue this funding, to think about what you could do with some of that waterfront property. Maybe acquiring, land for, open space, which is a goal in and of itself, or maybe going a step further and saying, this is an opportunity to create a boat launch or two, and have, recreation, possibly tie that in with tourism. You do some riparian buffer restorations. I mean, there's a lot you can do with it, and I think, you can get funding for that, which, it's something I'd really recommend looking into. And then finally, for this section, we recommend creating a plan that combines elements of a capital improvements plan as well as an economic development plan under the kind of umbrella term of green economic development plans. And for this particular section, we recommend looking at infrastructure. How is future climate models going to, and again, I keep going back to flooding, because this is probably the most pressing natural disaster for you guys, as well as most communities in Ulster County. How is flooding going to affect your infrastructure? Is it going to affect your bridges, your culverts, your storm sewers, your water mains, natural gas lines, all that major infrastructure that our communities rely upon? Does that mean these road stream crossings need to be upsized? Does that affect their lifespan in any sort of way? Do we need to allocate more money for maintenance? All these things would need to go into one of those plans. The next section is under disaster preparedness and recovery. And we recommend creating an evacuation plan for both the town and the village. We clearly define municipal responsibilities. And actually, I should back up a second. When we were talking with our officials, you do very much have an informal evacuation plan, a lot of informal plans for this sort of thing on the town and village level. But this is really talking about making it a more formalized plan, so everybody knows exactly what they should be doing, what their responsibilities are, and map out multiple evacuation routes from flood-prone or hazard-prone areas, and identifying vulnerable populations. So the elderly, folks who are disabled, with disabilities that may need assistance in getting out of those hazardous or flood-prone areas. Similarly, we recommend creating a heat emergency plan that identifies cooling centers in the town and the village, and doing an assessment on whether maybe you need to create more, or find ways to get those vulnerable populations who may not have ready access to air conditioning into either the currently existing cooling centers or newly developed ones on those high degree heat days, which unfortunately we're getting more and more of as time goes on in our summers. And this last bullet looks very similar to the one in the previous slide, and it is the same action, but it's coming at it from a slightly different angle. The previous slide talked about infrastructure, but within that green economic development plan, you could also include elements of doing assessment on what you could do to increase green economic opportunities. So it's kind of like green collar jobs that they've talked about in the news so much these days. And finding ways for the municipalities to encourage that type of development and boost the economy that way. So again, the previous slide was talking about it from a way of like saving money, keeping your infrastructure protected. This and on this slide is talking about it coming from a slightly different angle of almost generating revenue, creating economic activity, and that could all be included in that green economic development plan. And then finally, the last category we'll talk about is hazard mitigation implementation. And our first recommendation here is to participate in FEMA's Community Emergency Response Team. This gets your municipal staff better trained to prepare for disasters, as well as volunteers for that matter. We also recommend supporting land acquisition programs to purchase land conservation easements or even land outright in hazard-prone areas. And then take that a step further even and talk about, restoring the floodplains and the riparian buffers to those areas. So again, similar to what we were talking about with the LWRP, acquiring, waterfront property and think about, you can certainly acquire it just for open space, but you could also acquire it for, recreational purposes, you can, restore, buffers and ecological integrity there. The New York State Department of Environmental Conservation has a program called Trees for Trips. I'm sure some of you are familiar with it. You could access them to get, free riparian plants, which will, again, help with the ecology of the area, help with stream stability, limit erosion, help slow down the velocities of flood flows. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity you can do there to help with mitigation. And then the big question we always get asked to say, well, these are all wonderful things, but how do we pay for them? Well, you don't necessarily have to reach into your own coffers to do that. There's lots of programs out there at the state level and certainly at the federal level to get money to implement these programs. And I list several here from FEMA, the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, the FEMA Pre-Disaster Mitigation Grant Program, the Flood Mitigation Assistance Program, and in this last one, the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities, or BRIC program. That's actually quite a new program that's just launching now. And what's nice about that one is that particular program is really looking for unique, interesting, large-scale projects that could, very much a community visioning in a way. That's what they're looking for, these sorts of mitigation things. So my point is there's lots of funding opportunities out there for you. You don't necessarily need to levy new taxes or dip into other funds or steal from other lines to implement these projects. And that's all I have here. I don't know if Melinda wants to say a few final words, but I just want to say thank you to the boards tonight for hearing us and listening to us, and to all the folks who helped us with this project. And I'm sure we will answer any questions that you may have.
Yes, and thank you, Brent, for sharing that so eloquently. Sometimes it's funny when you talk on Zoom, you get marbles in your mouth. But it was just a pleasure to work with all of you. But again, Brent has shared a whole list of possible funding sources. Some of these recommendations, if you want to pursue them, reach out to us with questions in the future. We'll check in with you again a few times over the course of the next year and see if there are ways that we can assist you.
Much gratitude to both you, Brent, and Melinda, for all the fine work that you've done here. This has been really awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and thanks Janelle for shepherding the project on behalf of both the town and the village.
Yep. Just David, adding a big shout out to Janelle for just really bringing us through this in such a wonderful way. That kind of volunteerism is just helps us do these great things. So thank you.
Well, if anybody has questions in the future, if you don't have any this evening, like I said, feel free to reach out to Brent or myself. We're happy to assist in any way we can. And there are ways that we can kind of take this a step further for you in the future. With some of the, this is all grant funded for us as well. And we do have opportunity to take some of it forward when the time is right for you. And that's basically the way most of the communities are finding funding. When they actually embark on a project, some of this works into it naturally, or they're able to, sort of leverage these documents for additional grant funding.
Good stuff. Yeah, sorry, I don't have any questions off the top of my head right now, but appreciate the offer to try to help us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and to everyone who contributed.
May I jump in with one thing quick?
Absolutely.
It was interesting, you know, when you said one of the things is to seek training opportunities for municipal staff in flood mitigation. Actually, what we've been doing for quite some time now is monthly meetups just for the community. And guess what our next topic is going to be in October? It is water management tips for residential landscaping. So you know, it's great. We're doing it at the community level, and this recommendation is to do it at a municipal staff level. So very much recognize that that's a key issue for us.
That's fantastic. I will say one thing that we learned working with both Janelle and Amanda, they are highly motivated in the pursuit of climate resilience, and you're very lucky to have them. It's been just a pleasure working with you.
Thank you, Linda.
Janelle, could you share the date and stuff for that upcoming October meetup?
Yes, it's October 6th at 6, coincidentally. Our meetups are always the first Tuesday of the month at 6 o'clock. And that we started before COVID, so we were meeting, moving it around at different restaurants, bars, whatever, and often having dinner. So we've kept it at 6 o'clock, hoping that someday we'll get back to that pattern. This one is the presenter is going to be Mark Massio, and he will be presenting from his location, yes, Calico Nurseries out on 32. But no doubt we'll have to also run this as a Zoom. So there might be a few people that could be on location, but then we'll make it available on Zoom. And that's always, the details of that are always in the monthly newsletter with the Zoom link.
Good stuff. Well, thanks everyone again. And we're gonna jump, I believe Tal is here from the Millbrook Preserve, and you're gonna chat with us about the learning areas idea.
Yes, hi. Thank you for adding us so last minute. So we've been hearing a lot from community members and parents that they would love to have some outdoor spaces to take kids as a part of educational experiences. So we are looking to get feedback as well as consent and kind of fast track potentially this idea that we have to just very simply kind of creating some spaces within the Millbrook Preserve that people can take some small groups. So the idea that we would essentially place stumps 6 feet apart in circles in already existing clearings within the preserve. So no vegetation would be removed to do this. And it would just give people a little bit more space to bring some small groups in and have kind of a place to actually sit and gather for various purposes. So we are looking to see if we could get village and town permission. We've identified maybe 3-4 locations that we would kind of create these circles.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a fantastic idea. You know, it's breaking my heart that, you know, kids are staring at computer screens as much as they are right now. Yeah. So let's get them outside. Let's use this taxpayer-owned asset that we're so lucky to have. So I motion that we let people sit outside on the stumps.
Second.
Make the same motion for the town.
David, second.
Did we vote, Tim?
Yeah, I said all in favor. I don't know if it got gobbled up.
I don't think I heard that. Aye.
Okay.
All in favor for the town?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Did we hear from Bill?
About just any opposed?
Sorry, it wasn't working. Aye.
Great. Thanks, Tal. Thanks
Great,
for
thank you all.
working on this.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, so then the next item is this MOU between the town and the village, and this relates to the groundwater wells that we installed over at the northern edge of the Moriello Pool Park. So we had success drilling 2 wells that have excellent yield. We hope to connect them to our distribution system right on 32. So that project will require alienating them from the town and village owned state. Well, I guess the reason it's considered a park and it has official park, I don't know what, per the New York State Parks Department, is because it received federal funding in like the early 80s. So we're responsible for going through this process where we actually have to alienate this portion of the park, and this requires an act of the state legislature. And then we have to then add some other property to our park holdings as an offset. So fortunately, the southern portion of the town and village owned Moriello Pool Park is not considered part of the park. So our thinking is, let's just take that and augment that with the rest of Moriello Pool Park so that we're then able to alienate the area where the wells are and connect them to our water conveyance system. But this will also involve constructing a water treatment shed that will be about 16 by 10 feet. So it's like a hair smaller than that existing wooden shed that's on the town community center property. And Neil and I were out there the other day with Blue from our public works department, as well as our engineers from Chasen. And our thinking is, why don't we just reconstruct that shed, remove it, and then confirm with the folks from the town's building and grounds department and add anything that is in that shed currently, so that we will have an insulated and protected pump system, in the 16 by 10 foot shed. And then we'll have some additional storage space for the town to use, but it'll be updated and newly constructed compared to the shed that's a bit long in the tooth. That's
We
there
basically
right
get a new shed for free.
Right. Well,
the town gets a new shed for free.
Yeah. So, and we're gonna, that we're leaning in the direction of having the wells on their own new parcel, and then having the shed being built on the town-owned community center parcel. But we're gonna wait to hear back from the engineers just to see if that makes the most sense. Because originally we were thinking, why don't we put the shed and the 2 wells all on its own new parcel? So this is basically just an MOU saying that the town and the village are on the same page. We're also going to share this with folks from the state and county Department of Health to make sure that they're comfortable with our concept. And then we're going to get this to the legislative director in Senator Metzger's office and ask the senator to help us get this legislation passed in Albany. So I motion that the village board goes ahead and signs this MOU.
Second.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I make a motion that the town board authorizes me to sign the MOU.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Thanks, everybody. So town, you guys have a discussion on a plow purchase you need to do? Because our joint agenda is done. So you want to do your thing and then you can either hang out or turn your Zooms off?
Yeah, so I don't know, this was, it didn't make it on the agenda for the last meeting, but because of the spending freeze that we have to approve purchases over a certain amount. We sent this around. This is, Chris says he needs this is a plow for one of the big trucks. Obviously, it's a $10,000 plow, I think. And so we just need board approval to spend the money for a new plow.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
And before we end the town portion, I've been in communication with Alex. I need to recuse myself from votes about the Millbrook Preserve so that we didn't have a quorum for our vote about the Millbrook Preserve. So Alex she had something she had to attend to, but she's able to, attend now to the meeting, and she's logging on. Is that something we can do real briefly?
Sure.
If folks have a moment. If it takes more than a minute, then we can just, find another way to do it. But I think it'll
We
only
can just
take a
hang
minute.
out till she gets here.
However they stretch.
You guys can keep going on with the village stuff if you don't mind us interrupting in a little bit.
There's Alex coming in.
There it is. Oh, thank you.
All right, Alex is here now. I'd like to make a motion to authorize the construction of learning areas in the Millbrook Preserve.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You.
Thank you all.
Thanks, town.
See you soon, town.
Hang out if you want to talk Kinstonian pilot, town.
Okay, so we're going to continue. And the first item on our village business agenda is a village board Kingstonian pilot position statement. So this statement is basically split into two pieces. The first piece is basically a comment on just the formula in terms of why pilots are problematic because of the New York State sales tax law. And actually a housing project like this does a really great job of illustrating just how problematic the way the law is currently written is. And, it's so problematic that over the last several years, there's been quite a few bills proposed to try to fix this, and it never sees the light of day. Actually, it was passed by the Senate and the Assembly a few years ago, but then it was vetoed by the governor. Ordinarily, these bills, they never even come out of committee. But it's just it's a formula problem, and to me, it's kind of reason number one why a municipality would never agree to a pilot. When I was on the town planning board, plus 5, 6, 7 years ago, we came up with a finding statement related to the Park Point development. And the primary reason that we voted against the project was because of the pilot and because of the way the formula would actually harm the taxing authorities. And it's explained really well where when you construct new housing, you're going to end up with additional responsibilities and expenses as a taxing authority, especially if you're a school district. So in the case of constructing new housing, you're going to end up with a certain number, and there's ratios that you can use. So like if you build 100 new units, that have X number of bedrooms, you're going to end up with Y number of K through 12 aged children. It's just math. It's just what happens when you add units to any community. So the way pilots are currently formulated, or the way the sales tax law is currently formulated, you end up with new units, and then the school district has no way of being able to increase their budget to accommodate the additional demand on their school district. It's a fundamental flaw. And several years ago, the town of New Paltz was sued by the developer because of the decision that our town planning board made. And the judge sided with the town of New Paltz because of, how this process currently works. And, that's why the legislators in Albany have tried to fix it, but they've unfortunately been unsuccessful. And then part 2 of this position statement speaks to this sales tax agreement that we live with here in Ulster County, where the the 4%, it's basically half of all the sales tax that's collected. We have an 8% sales tax rate in this community. 4% goes to New York State. The other 4% gets split, and the split goes as follows. The city of Kingston gets 11.5%. The 23 towns and villages split 3%, and Ulster County gets 85.5%. And we've had numerous discussions as a board, both the town and the village. We've written resolutions saying that we want the county and the city of Kingston to take a closer look at it. Especially in a community like the village of New Paltz, we're able to get sales tax data from New York State that shows how much money we generate within our zip code. But then based on this agreement, both the town and the village share 0.1% of all the sales tax that's generated in this county, even though we generate millions and millions of dollars. Based on the current agreement and what we have seen, it's a teeny tiny fraction of 0.1%. So it just, I feel like this is another reason, this is not New Paltz, not staying in its own lane. This is, our county of 180,000 people that we're all responsible for generating sales tax as a collective. Some communities might generate more or less at different times. As we've said in New Paltz, that we're, consistently in support of a progressive redistribution of sales tax, and the way the sales tax agreement between the county and the city of Kingston, it is anything but that. Where 23 towns and villages have to share 3%, it just does not make a whole lot of sense. It does not feel equitable. And the example that I use regularly, that I think resonates with people, is that the village of New Paltz, we have to pay public works guys overtime on the weekends to come in and remove filled up barrels of trash on the weekends. And the reason that we have filled up barrels of trash is because we generate a significant amount of sales tax. And then the folks who are paying for that are the local property taxpayers. There's no correlation between commerce and sales tax activity and then being able to afford and pay for services like that. It's just that the local property taxpayers have to endure those additional expenses. And it feels like we should be, involved in this partnership that includes encouraging, visitors and encourages, locals, whether they're from New Paltz or whether they're from somewhere else in Ulster County, to come and enjoy our downtown and our outdoor recreation assets. So, what we've basically come up with here is a position statement that says that until the state's tax cap law and the county sales tax agreement are amended, the Village of New Paltz Board of Trustees declares its opposition to any pilot agreements that result in a reduction of real property taxes versus full taxation based on a full market value assessment determined by local assessor offices. So, that's kind of my quick summary of this 2-page position statement. Want to just open it up to the rest of the village board, see if you guys have comments or feedback.
Thanks, Tim. That was an excellent summary, and thank you for laying it all out. We know a lot about pilots. Just to back up a little, to give some context about why Tim knows so much about pilots. It's not like he just learned this all in the past 3 months. Previous service on planning board and school board, controversial pilots in New Paltz, So we've been talking about, it was not like you had to write this from scratch, right, Tim? We've been talking about this issue, researching and trying to advocate for better system and processes for a long time. And I mean, I always joke, unless it's for affordable housing, like I just don't even think pilots are a good public policy. And I thought 5 years ago that they'd be dead by now because none of the promises for jobs materialized like systematically. The whole point is promise of jobs, and they didn't even have clawbacks if that didn't happen. And it just seemed like it was going to be a dinosaur of a public policy. And I'm surprised that it's still around and now that we're in COVID and, we're in a pandemic, and I can't even wrap my head around asking for buy-in from property tax payers right now, given the cuts that we're all looking at and the fiscal cliffs that school districts and municipalities. I think we have a little bit of either, well, maybe a combination of denial and just lack of awareness. Even if DC acts and sends us some federal dollars, I think it's not going to be sufficient. It'll just be stopgaps, and there'll be strings attached, and hey, bring it. Don't not do it, Mitch McConnell. Please do it. But this is just not an environment for this. And then also, like, I don't think we should be building parking lots at all. It's autocentric. It encourages autocentrism. Did I just make up a word? An autocentric community. And no, this is not the right time for this. And I think it highlights how we're all connected across the county as well. I think Tim did a good job of, because I don't want to jump in on other jurisdictions, stick my nose into their stuff without, being able to cogently provide the case that my municipality is impacted as well. And I think that that's done well here. So, clearly, I'm fully in support. Also, Eve wrote in the chat that she has an answer to the county legislatures, or I think she has more information. So,
Yes, I do. So apparently, so typically IDA has the capacity to approve or disapprove pilots on their own unless the entity is seeking a deviated pilot. And so in this case, they're seeking a deviated pilot, specifically, from what I understand, not looking for any tax increase for 30 years. So that opens them that it has to now be approved by the city of Kingston, the school district, and the county. So it will be in front of us. They had tried to get it in front of us for this month, but I'm not sure why, but missed deadlines. So I'm assuming it's going to be in front of us next month.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And I think the point that KT was highlighting, like, if a developer wants to construct luxury housing in Kingston, that's on Kingston. They can go ahead and make that decision. The reason that I think it's important for our community to comment on this is, we're already so intertwined in terms of our revenue pictures because of this, what I would consider an inequitable sales tax agreement. If the city of Kingston is fine with forfeiting property taxes and then expecting, well, that to be an okay thing because they have this this ability to collect sales tax via the sales tax agreement, that is just what does not sit correctly with me as a someone with fiduciary responsibility to manage our general fund.
Yeah. So, I mean, KT said something also about just like the timing currently feels extra inappropriate, right? We knew we were as a county in like a housing crisis before COVID. Now it's like emergency doesn't even like express what we're facing. It's way past the emergency and crisis point. Like we need to make a new word because it's really, really, really bad. We're in the worst state, as a county, in terms of housing affordability right now. And we have it just seems so absurd to me that we would even be considering like essentially subsidizing, or like the county in Kingston would even be considering allowing for something that has to do with luxury housing. So it's interesting too, because I know the project tried to like address some of this issue a while back by adding what they say is affordable housing, but because it's a private institution, that affordable housing is not really like subject to actual definitions of affordable housing. So we know that in our county, rent has been outpacing wages for quite some time, since like 2002. The whole county's like rents have gone up 55.8%, and this is before this past year. So I'm sure it's a much worse stat now, just based on my own lived experiences. Whereas wages have not been increasing. In fact, I've seen some stats that for the county as a whole, wages have actually been decreasing. The Kingston Tenants Union had posted a couple stats about that. So that's really stressful. And then before COVID, more than half of our county's residents were already rent burdened. And so like what rent burden means is like you're paying more than 30% of your income for housing. And before COVID, about 30% of Ulster County residents, are the term is severely rent burdened, where it's you're paying more than half of your income on rent. So and that's before what we're facing right now in the time of COVID, with everything that we all know we're experiencing, or our friends and neighbors are experiencing. And in the village, our majority of households that are renters, are surely experiencing as well. So to even consider luxury housing that doesn't even have like a real true affordability component to it, that would be essentially subsidized by the whole county, and especially because of the unfair sales tax distribution, and especially putting that burden on, the way I see it, looking at where the tourist money comes, for sales tax, some of the most rent burdened populations in the county, just feels really stressful. And I do want to point out one thing that's really tricky about it is the Kingstonian project is always talking about like how the majority of the rents would be market rate, but that's not. Just want to make sure everyone knows that's not fair market rate by HUD's stats. It's just another word, that means like what the going rate is, which we all know no one can afford. So those are my feelings. I'm very much in support of this position statement. Thanks so much for drawing that up.
Can I ask or suggest or posit something also? So I'm struggling. I'm figuring this out while I'm talking, so I apologize if it's not clear. One of the things we often hear related to the sales tax is Kingston's doing us a big favor. They could just collect their own sales tax on their own. They have been nice enough to join in with the county. So related to that, Tim, it'd be very useful if there's a faster way than waiting for the comptroller to find out what Kingston's contribution actually is. Like, is it equal to the amount that they're getting in this agreement, or is it actually, are they taking a reduction?
I think that unfortunately is going to be hard to figure out, because one of the advantages that we have in New Paltz is that we have one zip code.
Right,
so
right.
When we get data from the Department of Finance and Taxation, I'm just asking for zip code data.
But do they
And
give the +4 or +5 possible for zip code?
I don't know what that is.
Where you add the last few digits that actually distinguish where, so, because yes, 12401 includes so many, but if you get the 4 digits afterwards, it allows you to know whether it's what the specific area is to separate out the city of Kingston.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether they have that level of granularity in terms of being able to provide the sales tax data. I mean, it's just been explained to me that, you know, we can get our 5-digit zip code data. I don't know if like the town of Ulster and the city of Kingston can, you know, shake out, you know, what money ends up where. I mean, I also go to Kingston on weekends and I go to New Paltz on weekends, and you know, we're choking here, and we've been trying to tell the county that for a long time. Like, we need you know, some additional assistance in terms of how do we manage all the visitors who are attracted to this magical ridge and all of our world-class outdoor recreation. And now that we have the Empire State Trail and the River to Ridge, like, this is like an unbelievably attractive place to live and visit. And you know, I don't want to see us shoot ourselves in the foot where, you know, we want to be able to successfully manage, you know, the visitor's experience, so they don't come and just like, wow, that was just a congested mess. You know, we're generating sales tax, but I think the opportunity is to encourage visitors and people who live here to continue to enjoy what we have without it feeling like a congested mess.
Yeah, I agree totally.
But if you know, it's like Uptown Kingston is nice on the weekends, but I bet if you look at the difference between, you know, the amount of stores that are open in downtown New Paltz, there's a lot of activity here. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a busier Main Street.
Right, and so
Yeah,
sorry. I just want to get this point across, and then you can talk and break it down, because I need to think about how I'm positing my argument. The concern I have is often the sales tax argument is we're not trying to reduce Kingston's amount, we're trying to just reduce the county's amount. But then in this kind of way of presenting these two together, it sort of suggests that you are actually, that Kingston's amount is part of what you're calling to attention. And so I guess I am just seeking that kind of, I know where in your heart you're thinking the 85.5% is too high, but putting it in this model with the Kingstonian, I just wonder if it's sort of suggestive that you're also, or instead, attacking the Kingston percentage.
No, I think you bring up
that was what I was going to speak to. That, like,
yeah, Eve, I think you bring up
yeah.
You're bringing up a really important distinction, and I'm glad you explained it the way you did, because I think you're right. That's not the goal. The goal is not to, you know, make the 3% larger by taking away from Kingston's 11.5%. The goal is to, you know, because even if you look at the 57 other sales tax agreements across the state, there's, you know, this I would not describe as an equitable sales tax agreement. And, you know, I've looked at the notes on the others. So I think you're bringing up a very fair point. The reason that we're talking specifically about the Kingstonian is because we have a project in Kingston where Kingston is choosing to forfeit property taxes, right? So we're saying don't choose to forfeit property taxes while we're all in this same tricky, you know, financial situation. You can't afford to give away your property taxes to pad the profit margins for a developer. That's the difference here.
Yeah, and that's literally what I was going to speak to. So we all got there. So teasing this out is good. Yeah, I'm just looking at the language to see if there's tweaks that we could make. So let me just say it in a different way. I mean, basically, we're not making the argument that Kingston should get more or less, right? We're saying the whole system is inequitable, and given that it's wrong to unilaterally forfeit property tax revenues right now. I mean, we also made some arguments about the appropriateness of a parking lot and luxury housing and subsidizing that, which I don't think any of us support. But in terms of putting it in the context from our point of view as shared leaders of overlapping and being just part of this taxation system, that it's just inappropriate because we're all connected and it impacts all of us. And again, like, I have no idea, I know that New Paltz generates like 13 million and gets less than 300,000, right? And I always say there's a lot of space in between those two. We're not asking for 13 million. We're asking for the sales tax that we generate so we can use it to provide the services that are generated in correlation with the generation of those taxes. It's really not that complicated. We do get stuff from the county, but it certainly doesn't add up to $13 million a year. And because the 85.5 is well above the norm, I think the city of Kingston has high need. They should get more than wealthy communities and more affluent communities, just like the village of Ellenville has higher need and should get more.
Right. We just need a different, I mean, unfortunately, it's the way that the state has designed this system where the only parties at the table to have this discussion or perform these negotiations are cities and counties. So, at this point, it's like we have towns and villages that feel like cities. And, at this point, it's unfortunately curious that they don't have a city at the table to participate in such an important discussion and, to make their case.
And hey, guess what is one of the major reasons that New York State has not allowed a municipality to convert to a city since before the middle of the last century?
Yeah, the city of Rye, 1948.
When you are a city, you get to do that. So I think it all is just so connected and circular. Like the threat, like that they're threatening, city of Kingston is going to enact its own tax on its own if we don't. Well, maybe they need to do that anyway right now.
And
again, it may not be in their best interest because they may not be generating 11%. So, I mean, I think it's a ridiculous argument, and I'm just, again, and I understood the intent. I just wanted to hear, I think you articulated it, both of you, really well, just sort of how this is clarified, because, I intend to express these ideas as and that clarity as to how this is about inequity in taxes and not about Kingston. But also, I think the parking thing is a very big thing, and I think that that's an important message to come across, that this is really so much about parking. And I'll tell you that so far what I'm hearing anecdotally is that the IDA is so far feeling good about it. The school district is feeling good about this deviated pilot. And so apparently they're buying into this idea that this increased parking will be the increased businesses this is my belief, that I have to talk to some other legislators some more, but that parking will bring more people into Uptown Kingston, which will then improve the sales tax revenue because more people will be shopping in these stores. I mean, that's what I'm guessing they're going to be making the argument saying, because it's all about
the Kingston School District doesn't get any sales tax.
Yeah, I don't know why the school.
It doesn't.
Okay, and you should talk to your friends on the school board, because I think they're pretty split, is my perception.
I mean, that'll be great, because if they don't approve it, they have to, or it won't get. I mean, each of these entities now have to approve this deviated pilot, and so if the Kingston School Board doesn't approve it, that'll be a stop.
Right, and in this position statement, we have a link to the tax cap guidance provided by the New York State Education Department, where it articulates how the formula works. So the revenue is not revenue that's like, oh, this is new money, now we can afford to pay for the new students that are here because of this additional development. It actually works in the opposite direction, curiously. You actually end up shrinking your tax cap levy because of a pilot. It's kind of a mind twist.
It gets hit by both sides for the
But
property.
you actually have less money as a
It's a
school
punishment.
district
Yeah.
to accommodate the additional students you now are
You're probably arguing that there'll
providing.
be no kids because this is all high level, a luxury hotel in high level apartments, and they're probably going to be no children, is what they're arguing. I mean, I don't know. I'm just guessing here. But because somehow
I just want to jump in and say also that's myth, and we roll in the businesses wanting parking world, so it's not like we're naive about that. It's a myth, and it's not true. People don't go to places for their parking. People go to
I hear you.
places for their amenities, and I would say a planning best practice for 2020 is absolutely not putting parking in the center. You put it at the periphery.
Right. Well, I hope the school is here, and I will speak to someone on the school board where they are with that. But I'm not sure why they are supportive of this potentially. It'd be great to hear.
I don't know why that people even have that perception.
But again, if they're
it's
not,
just,
that's going to
if
be
you
good.
say that enough times, it becomes true strategy.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they can look at the resolution that the New Paltz Central School District passed in like 2013 regarding a project incredibly similar to this. It's like the similarities are uncanny, and the problems that a project like this and its pilot program would create. It's just I'm getting slapped in the head with deja vu.
And Tim, let's just follow up and put together some link, make sure that we send that off to the school, the Kingston School Board, with this. Yeah, there was something else I forgot though. I was gonna say, do we need to do any wordsmithing, or was that just we needed clarity? Eve,
nothing stood out. I just wanted to. I mean, you can look it over to just ensure that that somebody who doesn't have this long conversation with you and understands the fact that you are not talking about Kingston's proportion, but talking about that this is about equity and taxes, and this is about how we are one community, and this is about this should not be about parking, and this is harmful for the school. Like, I think those points.
I think it's good. I mean, yeah. I think it's good. I think it's there. I mean, we say we believe in a countywide formula that is more rational and equitable to support Kingston and all of the other 23. So
yeah. Okay.
But that was good discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Sorry, Bill. Was Bill trying to? Did I cut you off, Bill?
Yeah, I was just going to say it seems like a rather antiquated approach to things, given what's happened in our world and where we're transitioning to and from. I don't know. Maybe the state should put a moratorium on pilots. Put them on pause.
I smell a resolution. Unless it's for affordable housing. That's my one asterisk.
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, the details matter, but
right. This just doesn't make any sense anymore.
Like actual affordable housing. So are we
Okay,
voting
so
on-
do we want to motion to adopt this position statement?
Second?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next item. So Bill and I actually visited the property to the south of the Cherry Hill tanks. We've been discussing the possibility of working with that property owner on acquiring the wells there. The hydrogeologist that we've been working with, there's a well test from November of 2012 that we reference as the reason why we would acquire these wells. Our hydrogeologist believes that that was a wettish year, and it would be prudent to retest these wells. It also would probably make sense to retest them because they were pumped for the Park Point project, which only needed a certain amount of water at the time. And there's a possibility, and this is also an interpretation that our hydrogeologist came up with, like when he looks at the pumping test from November of 2012, the drawdowns were pretty minimal. So one could make the case that we should pump them at a rate greater than 50 gallons per minute, or this one well at a rate greater than 50 gallons per minute. However, all of this is like, timing is tricky because, we're in the midst of talking to this property owner about, whether we might acquire the property, whether his family may be interested in selling the property to us. So the jury is out on all of that. But I just at least wanted to have this conversation with the board and get something like an approval to move forward, but have it be contingent on the something like an agreement that both us as the acquirer and the seller are comfortable with. Because right now I think we've soft circled an idea, but we definitely have some time before we get closer to something, and we might not end up in a place where we want to move forward. But I at least wanted to throw out this idea of doing a retest to triple check the results that we ended up with in November of 2012.
So those are wells 7 and 8, is that right?
Well, yeah, well 7 and 8 are basically right next to each other, so we would only be testing a single well.
I see.
Just 7. And then, we're still figuring out whether, if we were to acquire property, how much property would we acquire? Would it include the area where well 6 is, which was not as impressive from a yield perspective. So we may or may not even want to repump that one, because, the one that really moves the needle would be the one that had previously yielded 50 gallons per minute. And why it's super appealing is because of its proximity in terms of how close it is to the Cherry Hill tanks.
Is there any possibility for well 9?
Where's well 9?
Well, there is no well 9, but a future well 9.
I think because, if we were to acquire, and I'm kind of spitballing here, but like 5 or 6 acres, it would be unlikely that we would roll the dice on a well 9, because the sphere of influence would be somewhat tight. If anything, maybe we would have the well driller use his cable rig tool and try to develop the well a little bit more to create some additional fractures where some more water could flow. We did that in the past and had some success squeezing out some additional GPM up at the water treatment plant property.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think the key is, like, could we retest this and pump it harder than 50 GPM? And it seems like there's a case that we might be able to, because they didn't need more than 50 GPM back then. They only needed 50, and that was 2 times what their daily use would be.
Yeah, and I think Russell's right. This is a time to do it. It's been a fairly dry season, and we're entering into more of a dry season. So this would be the time to do it.
So I'd like to make a motion that we approve hiring Jason and Jim Wild to help with the pump test, and to get it done within the next few weeks, hopefully the next month, but that this approval is contingent on, coming up with an agreement with the property owner, which again remains to be seen whether we'll be comfortable and he'll be comfortable. That's my motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
KT,
Aye.
she went to
Sorry.
convenient. Okay, so the next item, and Will wanted to include this language in that resolution. So could we augment the resolution? It says the Board of Trustees finds that the pumping of the test wells constitutes information collection and is a type 2 action under 67.5C24 under seeker regulations, which is therefore exempt from environmental review.
I'll accept that.
Thanks. Okay, Bill, walk us through the resolution that you worked on.
Oh, boy, I've lost my voice at the end of the day. Yeah, it's a resolution I wrote to honor 3 people who've passed away this past summer. Each of them all very involved and active in our community. Those women were Carol Roper, Sally Rhodes, and Mary Srothenke. I could read the whole resolution if you like, or perhaps Alex could read it for me since I can barely.
Yeah, I'd be fine if we just kind of summarize it because it's a pretty detailed resolution, and we'll make it available on our Facebook page.
Sure. What I'll do is I'll just read the first paragraph. How's that?
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Whereas over the summer, New Paltz lost 3 important community members, all women, who endlessly gave their time, energy, intelligence, and deeply rooted goodness to New Paltz for many years. They each set an example for embodying what it means to be an active member of a community, sacrificing time spent with family and friends, and a commitment to making New Paltz a better place to live. Their leadership and contributions will forever be remembered and appreciated.
Perfect. Thank you. I
Thank you,
motion
Bill.
that
Thank
we
you for doing
approve this agenda, or I'm sorry, this resolution.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then we have the short-term rental law. So I didn't have a chance to look at. Will provided the board with some comments.
I think we could just go through it. Oh, you know
His
what?
comments?
You gotta pull up the one. I don't think it's linked to the one on the agenda. I went.
It isn't because Will specifically said that they were
right,
not.
right. That was purposeful. So you have to go to the email and open that one. Or Ari sent an email with the link to the Google Doc. I think if
this one also is like a really old version. This is not even the one that I edited.
Oh. I didn't read it. Did you find the other one? Here, I'll just email it to you all real quick, okay?
The one with Will's edits?
Yes. And I think it has everything. Oh no, we may have a versioning issue. I thought it just was that all the changes were accepted and it had his notes, but I don't know.
Put in the chat the version that that I turned into a Google Doc that was from Will.
I think though, when you turn it into a Google Doc, you lose all the track changes. Because stuff that's crossed off in the last version is not crossed off in this version.
Okay, so, I cannot open whatever link was just sent.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any of the crossouts in this one. And now I feel like I have 4 of them open. I don't know what I'm looking at.
So the one that's dated 8/11/20 linked from the agenda, Tim, that doesn't look current to you?
I don't know. I mean, I spent like a few hours editing this. So I only want to look at the one that I worked on.
Here,
Yes.
can you?
So I want to provide a path to that, but I
So
don't want you
I
to
just sent you a
confirm.
different link. How about that one? It should be a docx.
I don't have access to these links that you're sending.
All right, hold on. I don't know why. Are you in your TER or in your mayor one?
I don't know. I got like 2 computers open.
Tim, the one linked from the agenda, that doesn't look current to you?
No, that's like 10 years old.
No, that is definitely an old one. And that was because Will specifically asked me not to make it his public.
Okay.
I can just forward his email to everybody. And
Yeah,
so
but
it'll be at the
I
top of your
don't
inbox,
have a
but it's
current
not a
one to
Google
look at.
Doc.
But we don't, I'm confused. So where do we get his only has comments?
Here, I just forwarded his Word version to all of you, but it's in Word.
But and that's current with all of the changes?
I don't actually know. Let me see. It looks like it's just highlighted. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
see if
I only see
download it.
highlights in that one also. That's why I'm confused, because that was the one dated September 4th. And it just has highlights.
Yeah, no,
Are you
has,
opening it in Microsoft
this is what must have happened. Will must have opened it in Word and accepted changes or something. Wait.
Yeah, well, he probably didn't accept changes. He probably just didn't see them because
He also
opened it in Word.
He also only edited the old version. We need him to edit the version that I wrote.
I absolutely sent him.
So did I.
Okay, we can't resolve this tonight, so let's not spend another minute on it, which totally sucks. But let's just move on because I don't think we can do this.
No, this is not the thing that I worked on.
Are we in agreement that it sucks, but we need to move on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm trying to find the agenda again.
Next up was bills and claims.
I'm just trying to find the agenda.
It starts 2020.
Yeah, motion to move bills and claims.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have a planning board liaison update?
Sure. They met last week. The highlight, I suppose, was the discussion of our easement for 51 Main Street. That was discussed quite a bit. Did learn that the applicant did state that he had thought about how he was going to fuel his building, and he's decided to fuel the building by using electricity, which gets him out of the propane or oil usage business, I suppose. So, and then there was a porch approved and whatnot, but that's about it.
Well, that's an interesting development. That was our recommendation from a few years ago that he do an electric building. So that's nice.
Yes, I was happy to hear that.
Okay, so we don't have a ZBA. I don't know that ZBA has even met, right?
It
I
has
don't
not.
think they have.
They have not.
Yeah. Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Yeah, you want to give me a call,
Me?
or anyone who, if we're to, but I guess we didn't make any edits to that Kingstonian position statement. There was nothing to edit.
Before we jump off of that, I'm sorry. Are we going to exec session?
It's okay.
No, for what?
Position being filled in the village.
I don't know what that's for.
All right, we'll pick it up next time.
Okay.
All in favor?
What's that?
Oh,
Motion to adjourn?
second again.
I think we did that. I did that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.